Welcome to the Win Win Evangelism Podcast. I'm Tina Waldrom from Evangelism in Australia. I love helping you and your church feel confident and inspired to share Jesus consistently. Before today's interview with Steve Fogg about online church and how to reach people for Jesus, I want to let you know about our free download that will help you answer the hard questions that people ask you about faith. And you can download that for free on our website, evangelisminaustralia.com. Today, I am absolutely delighted to have Steve Fogg back on the show again. Steve's a leading voice in digital church strategy, helping churches communicate effectively and reach people beyond the church walls. He's also the online pastor at Crossway Baptist Church in Victoria, Australia, which now averages, believe it or not, around 17,000 attendees every week at church online. Welcome to you, Steve.
Great to be here, Tina.
Always great to have you back. Now, tell us a little bit about your journey into online church and digital communications. For those that maybe haven't heard, what was the journey?
Yeah, so I was working in the marketplace in a communications agency here in Melbourne, and I was the creative director of that agency. Became a Christian, met my wife, got married, and realized that God had something else lined up for me. So I was working in an agency that was working with really high profile celebrities in Australia, government, state government, business. I was their kind of creative arm, and my team was. But I was learning all these communication strategies along the way. And the Lord directed me to serve at Crossway Baptist Church around the year 2000 as the communications person. And fast forward 7 years later, I started off with, a part-time web developer, half a day a week, and a part-time graphic designer, half day a week. By 2007, we had a team of kind of 5 or 6 people in that kind of zone because we realized the power of communications and that movement into digital. Social media came along, Facebook, and I have a good friend to thank me. He gave me our first Facebook page. He said, I think you should own this, because he'd started it for Crossway. I didn't even know about it. And I was on Facebook, but didn't know that you could do a page. And anyway, he gave me the page, and we had 800 people on it. Fast forward to today, we have 123,000 people who follow our page from around the world. And the Lord's just used it and opened my eyes to the power of social media back then, where it was social networks and social connections which helped spread the gospel. Obviously, since 2007, we've had, photographs put into social media and then video into social media. And at that time, I was still in the communications role, and it just felt like there was something more for online where we could actually share the gospel, not just a wonderful graphic or a piece of scripture, but how could we actually share the gospel? And fast forward a few more years, early 2012, started to see something called Church Online and start to emerge from the States. Video at that time was still very expensive to stream. There were no kind of commercial streaming products out there that were cheap. The churches that I connected with who were doing church online were paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to stream, but very innovative. But I just followed it, tracked it, and Facebook was getting simpler with video, and then just felt the time was right for us to journey into church online. And that was really that tipping point going, now we can actually share the gospel. Now our digital front porch has changed as a church, not just from a piece of scripture or a picture post on Facebook, but actually people can get a look into a service if they're curious about faith, or if they're disconnected from church, or if they maybe have mental health issues, or, as we've discovered along the way, lots of different types of people are at church online every single week, and they're not bound by geography. So around 2015, put this paper together for our board. Very new concept. There were no other church online kind of presences in Australia, and we had 800 people show up to our first weekend. which was in itself was amazing. I was just like thinking it'd be like 80 people. And yeah, it was quite incredible. In a couple of years, we had a couple of thousand regularly just calling Crossway Online home. And then we fast forward to today, people have come to faith. We have online life groups, community groups, and we have people who are from all kinds of different backgrounds from around the world, who call themselves Christians because of the gospel that they've heard preached from Crossway Online. And it's just been a wonderful journey. And most of those stories, Tina, we'll never know, right? We'll never know the countless stories of new faith, people who are coming back to faith. And then obviously COVID hit, and all of a sudden everyone's online, churches are online, and and then every church in the world wants to talk to me and a couple of others about church online and how do we do this, and became kind of the most important thing. And then COVID came and went, and then became the least important thing for churches. But those people are still out there. And that's my encouragement to every pastor who's listening to this, is that you probably have more people, if you stream online in any capacity, if you upload your sermon video post, you probably have, across all of your channels, more people online who watch you or listen to you than who attend your church. That is just the reality of church online. Digital, you just scale, you go viral. The challenge for every church leader is that you've got to connect that view with a person. There is a weird dichotomy in church world where we devalue the view to almost like a subhuman level. But the reality of that view is that is a person who is known by God, who is loved by God. Their life matters. And I speak to lots of pastors around the world. I just tell them, hey, imagine you are turning up to preach the gospel, and everybody in this endless room is coming to hear you preach, and they want to hear a message that they've never heard before. Whereas inside the four walls of your church, we have distractions, or we don't want to necessarily go to church every week, but there's this hungry kind of desire of people who are searching. Every single week online, people are searching, who is God? Did Jesus die? Why is Easter what it's called? What is origins of Christmas? Was Jesus really born at Christmas? Like all kinds of questions that we wouldn't necessarily ask at church, but they are people who are spiritually searching, and they all want answers to those questions. And your church has that same opportunity as my church has. And there's no competition at all. We're all on this journey together. And that's really my encouraging kind of little poke in the ribs for people, is your church can do it. You just need to know that you need to engage with those people who are watching online. So as for us at Crossway, we built a culture in our church services online where our community who comes back every single week knows that they can dive into the chat, knows that if they dive into the chat, someone will actually answer them.
Yeah.
So they feel seen and heard. And that's taken us years to build that culture up. But it works, because as soon as they go from anonymous to known, and as soon as they become known, it means that myself or one of my team can help disciple that person, depending on what point of the journey that they're on. And that's really that's where we go from just a stream to a campus, because it's actually life change and life change happening. And so if you're just streaming, if you're just uploading your content, great, that's a good first step. But the next step is to realize actually someone's going to ask you a question. So if you go back to your YouTube channel or your Facebook page, are you actually answering those genuine questions that come in?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So let me ask you a question about that, because I think the question I want to know is, how do you move someone from watching content to engaging with the content to exploring faith to following Jesus? Like, in a nutshell, what do you do to move someone in those steps, so to speak. So let's take someone that's watching an online service at your church. What do you do to engage them? What do you do to get them explore faith and to follow Jesus?
Yeah. So they're already on the journey of exploration. The challenge is so that, they might just search for a church. So often when I talk to a person, I say, how did you find us? And they'll say, oh, we found it on Google. So let me give you an example. There was a couple who were watching from Queensland, and they found us through Microsoft Copilot, so an AI engine. And what they put into that was the best online church in Australia. And we came up first. And that's great. They had a faith already, but they're trying to reconnect into a church. So it was a very Christian kind of journey. But then we were able to engage with them because the key difference is once they've landed into a service, it's how do you speak to them?
Yes.
So most churches operate in a realm of what I call aquarium church, where you are only communicating inside the aquarium to your fish, right? But you've got all these people who are looking on from the outside, tapping on the glass, going, let me in, right? But as churches, we often ignore them. So what we have at Crossway is what we call a hybrid service, where to the best of our ability, and sometimes we do really well at it, sometimes we don't, but in that hybrid service, we want to welcome people online. So as the service starts, the worship leader will welcome those who are watching online explicitly. As a host comes up to onto the stage, they'll welcome people in the room. And for all of you who are joining us online, welcome. Why don't you go and dive into the chat? Pastor Steve and his team are in the chat right now, waiting to chat with you. And then I will be in the chat at that moment. And the community will come into the chat as well, just to help people feel comfortable engaging in the chat. And then through the sermon, as the sermon is there, we think about how does an online person interact with a response, because they can't come down the front for a prayer. So the preacher, just even this last weekend, I'm texting the preacher going, hey, don't just invite people down the front, tell them that they can get prayer online as well. So, just reminding the person, hey, and of course, we have 4 services over the weekend. So in that next service, he's telling them, hey, if you're online, you can dive into the chat and pray with Pastor Steve and his team. His team is there to pray with you, and people will get prayer. So we use the Church Online platform, which allows us to pray with people live, as well as Facebook and YouTube, where they'll click on the link and then we'll pray with them via email or a phone call or something like that. So it's really that kind of movement from aquarium church and making that aquarium bigger so that people who are watching online actually start to lean in because they feel like they're being spoken to.
Yeah.
Not ignored. And they're not just a member of the audience, but they're part of a church. And so another example, for example, we had a young lady who was watching in Canberra. And when we, again, we have lots of people who are kind of just watching, but when we have our baptism services, we will always say to those who are getting baptized, hey, not just you getting baptized, but anybody else in this room can get baptized right now. Or if you're watching online, you can get baptized as well. So we widen that gap. And that young lady, again, she's exploring the faith, becoming a Christian online, watching Crossway, reached out to me and said, I want to get baptized. And can I come next week? Okay, yeah, sure. Come, let's baptize you. So this young lady comes next week, and I'm standing on the front row with her. She didn't want to read her testimony. She was very nervous. And as we were worshiping, and I'm actually frankly enjoying the worship on the front row of church because I'm never in the room. I'm always on my little screen. I'm loving it. I'm going, this is such a lovely change for me, so refreshing. I'm enjoying my worship. And then the Lord whispers to me during the worship and says, this girl has never been in church before, ever. And I go, oh, that was a little bit of a breakthrough moment. You're speaking to me, God. That's one thing. But then I look over to her. I lean in. I said, have you ever been in a church before? Whisper. And she looks at me and the kind of eyes widen. And she went, and I went, oh my goodness, that's God at work, powerfully speaking right there. So I said, don't worry, it'll be fine. Well done for being so brave. Because we're literally about to get on stage in front of 1,000 people and share her journey. But there are like countless stories like that of people coming to faith in different ways. And online is really just a digital front door where people can walk through. But how do we help them walk through it? If
Yeah.
you're a local church pastor watching, it's not just your service that they're seeing. They're coming to your church website and they're checking you out. So they're visiting your church websites. With the churches that I consult with and coach, approximately across the whole breadth of those churches, 70% of people that visit a church website are visiting for the very first time. A good proportion of those people will not be Christians. They're on some sort of journey towards faith. So my question and my challenge for the average pastor is, what's on your front page? Who are you communicating to? Who are you talking to? And how are you helping them take a step? Because often as a church, we will default to a picture of a building, or whoopee-doo. No one's really interested in that. But, are you new here, or what to expect page? Talk about Jesus a lot. People love Jesus, even if they're a little bit cynical about church as an institution. So just think about that. 70% next weekend inside your church are not visitors, but 70% on your website are visitors.
Yeah.
How does that change how you communicate with them?
Yeah, that's great, Steve. So great, so thought-provoking. And I think, it's great. We've had you on the show a few times, but we're so far down now into this discussion, and the expression of online church across Australia is very strong. So it's more accepting, the data's there, the results are there. We're not really here to argue, does online church work? We know it does. We know we need to be involved. Recently, you wrote an article on church communications in 2026. I saw that came across my email, but also at stevefogg.com, where there's a lot of great information. I'm just looking at that article. What would you say is the biggest shift that churches still aren't grasping? What are they not grasping?
Look, most churches still operate in a pre kind of 2019 mindset, if I'm completely honest with you. Most churches really, when they think about church, they think about it in a very linear way. They think about a sermon, right? Let's just take the sermon, for example. A lot of the time when people are first experiencing church, they won't necessarily stay for 35 minutes. But what they might watch is a clip. So a video clip of your sermon. Okay, so we call that short form video. And that's where the gospel travels, really. Short form video is where the gospel travels. And let me tell you why. When social media first came out, it was social. It was your friends, my friends, and somehow there was overlap, and there was one big bonfire, and we're all singing Kumbaya, and it was lovely. But really, we've gone from a social age to a discovery age on social media. And what that means is that with that, there comes another unique opportunity for churches, because 4 out of 5 posts as you scroll through Facebook or Instagram every single week will not be people that you know, or not be organizations that you know. So what the algorithms are saying is, based on what you are watching, they'll put more of that discoverable content in front of you. So if you are exploring faith, maybe you watched a Joe Rogan show or something like that, and there was a Christian segment to it. Sometimes he had Wes Huff on it recently, and he did an amazing job. But you watch that piece of content, and then all of a sudden the algorithms will start giving you associated content with that, and that could be your church. It might be a 2-second clip, it might be a 10-second clip, it might be a 30-second clip. I don't know, but it's a vertical video, because that's what a reel is. It's got subtitles, because we know 70% of people watch these videos with no audio on. So if you have a subtitle, that means people will actually watch the whole video because they're on a bus or something and they don't actually have that. It's socially awkward to have your video on. And if that's you and you watch videos on buses with the video on, stop it, please. But most people do. And what that means is that when people watch a video and finish watching it, meaning they've watched the whole thing, it sends a signal to the social media networks to say this is good content because they're watching it to the end. It's called watch time. And that's how the gospel travels, literally. It's a 30-second clip, a 15-second clip, and out it goes. You do that on YouTube, it's called a short. You do that on Instagram, it's a reel. You do it on Facebook, it's a reel. You do it on TikTok, it's just a, I don't know what they call TikTok reels, but I'm assuming it's a reel. But again, it's these algorithms help you get found. And it's not hard if you're consistent. If you do it every single day, if you don't just wait till a Sunday for a 45-minute sermon or a 40-minute sermon, there's more hours in the week, you can post it on the 5-6 o'clock every single night. There'll be a quotable quote out of your sermon, and off you go. That alone, it'll have more people watch that than turn up to your church.
Yeah.
And the vast majority of those people that watch your content do not go to your church. That is the single greatest big opportunity. The other opportunity is really that engagement piece where SMS, so we might think of it as an old school piece of communication, texts, but there's something in text that is deeply personal and human. And so when people visit your church or they're watching your church online, there's an opportunity for them to leave the phone number. And what I find is that when you SMS someone versus an email, you'll get a lot better reaction because it's a much more human sort of piece of communication versus an email, which is much more corporate. What I use personally is Facebook Messenger and Instagram Messenger for those who are on those channels. 90% of people who I chat to in those channels, whether it's during a service or just during the week, will respond. SMS, it's the same sort of thing. So I think it's a 96% read rate or something like that. So for that reality is that you think about that, they're watching you, they're a visitor, and they'll respond. Versus, in a church service, we'll go, if you're a visitor, go to the welcome desk or whatever setup that you have, you might get a 0.5% of people who are brave enough to do that. Maybe you throw in a decent coffee just to help them get there. But that's the reality online. That happens at scale, really. And again, I've talked about hybrid church. Really, hybrid is it. The vast majority of churches, again, don't just stream and ignore people. Start to engage, hire a volunteer or get a volunteer or hire someone to be in the chat and tell people in the service that you can be in the chat. And try and keep it personal. Again, that engagement piece is so important because I think I wrote in the blog, personalization is a new professionalism. And it really is because the more personal we are, the more people feel seen.
Yeah. Yes.
Tina, I remember when my wife Lou and I were first at Crossway, we had a pastor that was kind of like a fill-in at Crossway. He was standing in while one of our staff was on leave, and he had this photographic memory for names. And we'd gone on a holiday somewhere. He met us once, and we came back like 3 weeks later, and he remembered all of our names. Like all of our names as a family. And that moment there was like, that was such a tangible moment. That connection piece was so important. So again, it's that personalization really, really is important, but it's not necessarily so what it isn't is a mass email with insert name. That's not personalization, right? So just so you know. But what it can be is segmenting a list, an email list, with people that are coming for the first time, as opposed to regular attenders. That
Yes.
is a really simple step.
Mm.
And then the last one really is your pastor's personal brand matters more than ever. And really, your pastor is in some ways, the brand of the church. I'm not talking about celebrity culture here, but people follow people. And there's a connection that you can have as a communicator that it cuts through the organization. So people warm to the personality of the person communicating. And so your senior leader's voice is really one of your most important communication assets. So the question is, are you using that? Do they want to use it as well? If they're not interested in social media, that's fine. But the reality is that a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend of a friend might have heard them or seen them online and come to church. And we have it a lot with our team here at Crossway, where our team will especially our communicators, will go, this person came up to me and they were talking to me like they knew me. But this is their first time at church, but they've been watching online for a year. That is why it matters, because they just feel like they know you. And that's the wonderful thing about that personalization. It's not about building that pastor up. It's about getting that communication to cut through and help change someone's life.
Yeah. Wow. Some great practical tips here today, Steve. And gosh, we could go on and on and on.
Yeah.
But this has been very thought-provoking. Online church, how to reach people for Jesus online. We've explored that a little bit. There's so much more. At stevefogg.com, let me tell you, you can go down that rabbit hole and get stuck there for many helpful hours. And so in the show notes, I'm going to leave all the links so that you can stay connected to Steve and what he's doing. And very helpful what Steve's doing at his own church, but also for churches across the globe now. So, Steve, it's always delightful to have you on and always so thought-provoking and helpful. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Tina.